You know, I'm going to ask you this sort of again, just because I want to phrase it differently.
Sure.
I asked it wrong. What was before the demographics started changing? What was the makeup of Nashville before?
Gotcha. It was primarily black and white citizens. There was very little in the early '90s, and before that, there was very little international flavor of any kind. And since then, it has changed. You spent at least a couple of days there. You can tell that just from being in Nashville. The city's prospering as a result. But not only are we talking about the law-abiding, productive members of society, we're also talking about the gang members of society as well.
As someone who has lived in Tennessee for a good amount of time too, how would you describe Nashville to someone who's not from here? I mean, what are the things that the city is built on?
Music is the foundation of Nashville for most people. There's also been lots of industry here. In some of the areas, industry actually is what runs the train of Nashville, the economy, as it were. We have lots of health care at all different levels, all the way from the largest companies and headquarters to actually the hospitals that just represent all over the place. There's a lot to do in Nashville. There's a lot to see in Nashville. It's more and more becoming the place to go. Obviously, we're having an increase in the population, and depending on whether you're focused on business or the public sector, many business owners will tell you that we're centrally located to the vast majority of the United States, at least on the east side. You can get just about anywhere within 12 hours.
Religion plays a role, I'm guessing, as well.
There is a focus on religion in the area. Yes, sir.
How would you describe sort of? Would it conservative as well in some pockets? Not so much, or no?
I would, if from an ideological perspective, I would say there's conservatism outside of the Nashville area extensively. Within the Nashville area, it's more dispersed, as it were.
And I guess that's what I'm asking too. I guess that's sort of the thing that people would be surprised when you think of Nashville. You're thinking of this is all American City, USA. This is the place where people are very religious. This is not a place where you look at and say gangs.
Right. Whenever we talk to people who aren't from Nashville, they seem to be shocked that we could have gangs here. Well, there are gangs in very small cities. Cities of 2,000, there can be gang members. In cities of 2 million, there can be gang members, and everything in between. It's not that there's parts of the cities that are run down, though there are. It's not that there's socioeconomic levels that are below poverty, though there are. It's that gangs in our society, across the nation, across the world for that matter, gangs form based on a variety of factors, and we have those factors in Nashville.
What was happening, you touched on this earlier, but let's specifically address this. In the mid-'90s, the economy was good.
The economy was good in Nashville in the mid-'90s, yes, sir.
And because of that, what sort of happened to the overall size of the city and the demographics?
There was a lot of growth. People saw the vision of the future in Nashville, started building a lot of things. That was when the stadium, now Titan Stadium, LP Field, was built. My understanding is that the contractor for the stadium that was hired or chosen came from Los Angeles and brought his people with him. They happened to be affiliated with gang members in Los Angeles, and that brought a rivalry to what we already had in the area, and perhaps sparked some of the growth, or at least some of the acknowledgement of gangs in that time.
What was sort of here before then, gang-wise, when the stadium started going?
There was some Asian gangs already present. There was some what you might call local gangs, the African-American gangs, who may or may not have had a clear connection to their regional or national headquarters, as it were. When you talk about the Crips, the Bloods, the Gangster Disciples, the Vice Lords, many of those usually have a traditional connection, even if it's somebody who came here and started it up, or perhaps it's somebody who was here and started up. They're going to have a connection to the other gangs, at least an informal connection of some kind. So we had some local people who were at least acting out with the crimes and the things of that nature that we now know as gang activity. And they started forming groups of their friends or counterparts, and were committing crimes at the time. They started getting organized as the rivalries became organized. They kind of grew along with each other.
So did the more established gangs by that point in the mid '90s? They obviously were showing more organization than other newer gangs.
Right, and it's what I was referring to earlier with the generations of gangs. Think evolution of gangs. You start out in any profession, career, or something you're interested in. You're not very good at it. Well, when the first time you and I form a gang, we aren't going to be really good at it, but we'll get somebody to mentor us or guide us, or who we can at least ask questions of. And as we improve our activity, we're going to get better at it. We'll get more organized, and we'll evolve into a more close-knit unit, tighter contacts, less talking about the gang with the police and a variety of things. And that's happened in the past 15 years.
Speaking of the Hispanic gang specifically,
One quick adjustment.
sure. People we spoke with, they said, you know, back in the '80s, and even a family we talked to that owned a business the other day when they're from Houston and they're a Hispanic family. They said when they first moved to Nashville, there was no Mexican restaurants
Right.
here at all.
Right.
But then all of a sudden, this explosion sort of happened. Do you recall that from your experience as well?
Sure, there was. You could go for miles in not just Hispanic restaurants or Mexican restaurants, but also groceries. Mm-hmm. And as with any other community that moves into an area where they want to have a touch of home or bring their culture with them, as more Hispanics came into the area, you found more Mexican restaurants. You found more Mexican or Hispanic grocery stores and activities and things of that nature.
Was that putting the stress on the city at all, or did the city have some growing pains dealing with that population explosion?
I don't know that there was
yeah.
anything significantly with the growth. Nashville is a very flexible and open city. We took in a bunch of Katrina survivors, as it were, and the expansion might have, you might have thought that might be overwhelming, but with the numbers that came into Nashville were, I think, absorbed to some extent. I don't know that there was any infrastructure challenges or government challenges or anything of that nature. You noticed an increase, but there wasn't a state of emergency declared or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. What was the first Hispanic gang, I guess, that started showing activity in Nashville then?
I know the Brown Pride's been here for a very long time. I don't know that they were necessarily the first, but I do know that they were as I recall, in the mid '90s, they were one of the first to get a lot of people's attention.
Okay. So, and then that's sort of initially what we're talking about then. Once, I guess with Mexican, if you're Hispanic or from Mexican descent, you have a grocery store now. Then your gangs start developing as well. Just other different little things. I guess that's part of their identity
Right.
in the area.
It's part of the growth of new cultures in any area. You've seen that with just about, if not every group that has come to this country. You've seen at least a period of time where their activities are questionable, where their activities may be deemed illegal by the rest of society, but not by them. And yet each of these ethnic groups ends up being absorbed into society, and most of them get out of the criminal element, or what's seen as the criminal element by the rest of us.